Time to re-up YouTube. Your boy Young Mustard is back with another video, and we're here to talk about the young players in the league. More specifically though, the young players under the age of 25 and the 25 best of them. It's going to be a pretty long video, so let's just get right into it. This is my criteria. Starting off, I have talent. Second, I have success. Third, I have potential. And last, I have durability. And to not make things complicated, I obviously decided to exclude rookies because they haven't played yet. But trust me, when I do make this list in the future again, Victor Wembanyama will be here, of course. Now that we've established that, let's get on with the list. Coming in to start us off at number 25, I got Keegan Murray of the Sacramento Kings. Keegan had a pretty good rookie season as he immediately came into the NBA as an impact player from behind the arc with his shooting, being one of the best shooters in the league from night one. It was a huge boost for a Sacramento Kings team that last year traded Buddy Hield and also Halliburton, so they needed the floor spacing for their guys like De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis to operate. Keegan this past season as a rookie shot 41% from three on over 6 attempts a game. Very impressive. Now, I will say after his three-point shooting, it gets a little hard to put him higher on this list because he's not some outstanding defender. Even though he's a flexible offensive player, he's not a shot creator. And for someone who does spend some time at the four, his rebounding could be better. And to be honest, when it comes to his potential, I don't really see too much in his future. I don't think he's going to be a bad player. I think he'll be a solid starter, but that's about it. I don't see all-star in his future or all-NBA in his future, and I can't say the same for a lot of the guys higher on this list, so the 25th spot will do for him. Coming in at number 24, we have the young guard from Houston, Kevin Porter Jr. KPJ, in my opinion, is one of the more underrated players in the league and somewhat disrespected, as a lot of people disregard his potential on this Houston Rockets team and overall what kind of player he is. I mean, of course he has his flaws, but a lot of the upside and the things he brings to the table completely get ignored in these conversations. KPJ is a really solid ball handler. He's not an elite one like a Steph Curry or Kyrie, but he is capable of handling the ball and creating his own shot, albeit not too efficiently. But on top of that, he is capable of spacing the floor and he is a really good passer. I don't think he's a primary initiator of offense, but he is somebody that can be your secondary or third guy. Unfortunately, though, he does have some flaws, especially on the defensive side of the ball. He's not particularly great there. I would even say he's pretty bad. And on top of that, he does have playmaking issues when he is the primary focus of the defense. Still a really good young player, but I am interested to see how he plays this year with the new circumstances of the Rockets roster. Coming in at number 23, I have Brooklyn's own center, Nicholas Claxton. Claxton is a rare breed of defenders that I think gets swept under the radar for a lot of different reasons. This season, he showed tremendous improvement on the defensive side of the ball and even offensively, in my opinion. Offensively, he's not a great jump shooter and he struggles at the free throw line, but he has improved as a screener and roller. He's a good lob threat, but his real efforts come on the defensive side of the ball. He improved tremendously this year. He has the ability to switch on the perimeter and he can defend the paint with the best of them. He's a terrific shot blocker, and this year he was one of the best defensive players in the league. If it wasn't for the fact that the all defensive teams are position based, I think Claxton had a good chance to make first team all defense this year. Coming in at number 22, we have Trey Murphy of the New Orleans Pelicans. In my opinion, you could argue the most underrated player on this list. It's insane how little people talk about Trey Murphy because in his second season last year, I thought he was tremendous and showed a lot of upside as one of the better 3-and-D players in the league. Obviously, his ceiling is not crazy high, that's why he's lower on this list, but the talent he's already shown to be one of the better shooters in the league and his length and size to help him on the defensive side of the ball, I think it goes under the radar for some weird reason. I mean, when you talk about New Orleans, people bring up Herb Jones before they talk about Trey Murphy, and that's not the shit on Herb Jones. Herb Jones has his own thing going on the defensive side of the ball for that team, so I'm not taking anything away from him. But with the size and length that Murphy brings to the table that helps him on the defensive side of the ball, combined with his three-point shooting and his sneaky bounce at the rim that we saw in the dunk contest, I definitely think he is worthy of the number 22 spot and is a great asset for the New Orleans Pelicans going forward. But moving on to number 21, I have Alperen Sengun. Sengun, in my opinion, is a pretty polarizing player online, especially when you talk to Rockets fans. A lot of people outside of that fan base really don't like him because he's not a great defensive big, league, especially for a young player, which is why I do have him so low. Defensively, he is not good at all. He has decent hands to get in passing lanes here and there, but he still lacks in a lot of areas on that side of the ball. He's pretty slow-footed, so he struggles on the perimeter to move his feet and keep up with players. He lacks a lot of athleticism and verticality, and that's why he struggles in the pick and roll a lot, especially when he's tasked to guard a lob threat in those situations. And throw in the fact that he's already undersized at 6'9", and it presents a huge problem for that Houston Rockets team going forward. But despite that, I still do believe in the offensive potential of Sengun. I believe that Sengun can be an offensive centerpiece of a team. And I'm not talking about some mediocre offensive team here. I'm talking about a team that's one of the best offenses in the NBA. Sengun is one of the more solid post scorers in the league that has elite touch at the rim. He has good footwork in the post, nice feel for the game, a solid basketball IQ, and capable of making reads out of the post and in short roll situations, a great passer at his position, probably one of the 5 best passing centers in the NBA, at bare minimum top 10. And though he isn't a great floor spacer, I do believe in his potential to be a decent one going forward one day. The jury is still out on if Sengun can be a really good defensive player, or at least an average one, because right now he's teetering on defensive liability status. But with the pieces the Rockets brought in this offseason, along with the expected improvement of guys like Jabari Smith and Tari Eason on the defensive side of the ball, I definitely think that this is a make or break year for Sengun to show some potential there on that side. But speaking of the Houston Rockets, that leads into number 20 on the list, his teammate Jalen Green. Jalen Green, similar to Sengun, is pretty polarizing on NBA Twitter. Either you think he has the upside of like Kobe Bryant and he's going to be a Hall of Famer one day, or you think this guy is going to be Jordan Clarkson. And I'm not gonna lie, if you fall into the former and you think he's gonna literally be Kobe Bryant, I have some bad news for you, buddy. Now that doesn't mean that I don't think Jalen Green has some potential or upside, because trust me, I definitely think he does. He's a crafty scorer, albeit he's pretty inefficient right now. You can see the flashes in his game. Albeit he's a streaky 3-point shooter, he's capable of getting hot at any time in the season or game. And on top of that, he does have explosiveness to get by guys and finish at the rim, and he's pretty crafty there. Now I will admit, obviously there are flaws in Jalen Green's game that are holding him back. He's not a great decision maker, even though I think he's a much improved playmaker, especially in the pick and roll. He showed a lot of those flashes post All-Star break last year, but as of now, it's not a strength. It's something that he still needs to work on. And when you combine that with the fact that his shot IQ is probably not the best, but that's to be expected for a young player in the league, and defensively he isn't very good. His effort can be on and off, and even when it's on, it's still not leading into that much great production. This year, similar to Sengun, I do think that this is somewhat of a make or break year. Not saying he's going to get cut or traded if he has a bad season, but with the pieces that the Rockets have gotten and seeing what the Rockets fan base has been saying, I definitely think that we have to see some level of improvement this season that indicates and justifies why they took him at number 2, especially over a player like Evan Mobley, who was still available. But moving on with this list, at number 19, we have New York's own RJ Barrett. I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of shocked that RJ Barrett even made the list. Not because he's trash and he isn't worthy of being on the list, but I could have swore that RJ Barrett had passed 25 not too long ago, but I guess I was wrong. Feels like this guy has been in the league for a pretty long time. Nonetheless though, RJ just concluded a season that he was pretty inconsistent in the regular season, but come playoff time he showed a lot of potential offensively and defensively in my opinion. RJ has some holes in his game, but offensively he's capable of getting to the rim, and when you combine that with the fact that he is pretty athletic, not like crazy, but he's athletic to some degree, he has flashes on the defensive side of the ball. Now as y'all know, I do hate on the Knicks, especially RJ Barrett. I'm not a big fan of his game, but in the playoffs he did step up. He was a really good third option for the New York Knicks, and at times second option because Julius Randle sucks, and his play in the playoffs this year probably bumped him a few spots higher on this list, because aside from Keegan Murray, who was not as good as RJ Barrett in the playoffs, nobody below him even has playoff experience. Moving on to number 18, we have Jaden McDaniels of the Minnesota Timberwolves. I really like Jaden McDaniels. I think he's one of the best defenders in the league, even though he was snubbed of an all-defensive team selection this year. I think the impact that he has had on that Minnesota Timberwolves team, not just this season, but last season as well, has cemented him as one of the better young players in the league. His length and size makes him a matchup nightmare for anybody between 1 through 4. What he lacks in lateral quickness, his length and size can make up for it. And aside from being an elite defensive player, he's also a really solid offensive player as well. His shot creation ability needs a little bit of work, but you can see the flashes from time to time of him taking some players off the dribble. But where he really provides value, I think, is as a floor spacer. He's not taking an insane amount of volume from behind the arc, But as the season went on, the volume actually increased and the efficiency increased as well, as shown in the last 22 games where he shot over 4 attempts from behind the arc a game and shot 45% from 3. Now Jaden does have issues with his strength and size because outside of his length, he does not have that girth and inner core strength. So when he's going up against guys that have that physicality to their games and can attack the paint and the post, he can struggle in those situations, but he does still have the length to block some shots as well. I don't think the ceiling for Jaden McDaniels is extremely high like MVP or even All-NBA level, but I do think he's going to be one of the best defenders in the league over the next 5 to 7 years, and offensively he's already shown the capabilities to be a really solid and useful player. But moving on to number 17, I have Jay Will of the Oklahoma City Thunder, and not Jalen Williams, the bum center they got. I'm talking about the Rookie of the Year runner-up Jalen Williams. Now some are trying to make the argument for Jalen Williams to win the Rookie of the Year. Even though I was on the Paolo train, I was very intrigued by Jalen Williams' case though, I can't lie. Because in the second half of the season, one can make the argument he was the best rookie in the NBA. As from February on till the end of the season, Jalen Williams averaged 17 points a game, 5 rebounds and 4 assists, along with 2 steals, shot 53% from the field, 42% from behind the arc, albeit on around 3 attempts a game, and 87% from the free throw line. Throughout the course of the regular season, Jay Will improved at every aspect of the game. In the beginning of the season, he was a mediocre to below average defender. Now he's a plus on that side of the ball. His playmaking improved. His scoring improved. As a shooter, he improved immensely. As in the first 35 games of his rookie year, he shot 29% from 3. Jay Will's improvement throughout the season was a big reason why OKC was able to compete in a lot of those games and come so close to a playoff berth through the play-in. The only reason I'm not going to put Jay Will higher on this list is because he does have the opportunity to play with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and also with another ball handler in Josh Giddey, who's one of the better passers at his position as well. I do think he benefits from that lack of defensive attention, but next year is going to be pretty interesting to see how teams game plan for him on the defensive side of the ball and how he responds to it. But while we're on the topic of Jay Will, that leads into our next spot on the list. Coming in at number 16, we have Josh Giddey, his teammate on the OKC Thunder. Giddey, in my opinion, has a lot of upside, I can't lie to you. The potential for Josh Giddey to become a top 15 to 20 player in the league is right there. He has a high basketball IQ, he's a really solid passer, he has a handle, albeit it's not anything special or crazy, and though he does have a lot of flaws in his scoring, he still has shown some flashes to be better and improve. As this year we saw a significant tick in his efficiency and his volume scoring, going from 12.5 points a game to nearly 17 points a game this season, and a true shooting percentage that went from a horrendous 47% to now this year in his sophomore season 53%. Giddey obviously needs to work on his floor spacing. He shot 32% from behind the arc this year, which is still an improvement from his rookie season, but still 32% is not going to cut it, especially when you're a primary ball handler. And defensively, he could definitely improve. I mean, he has the length and size to be at least decent on that side of the ball, but right now he's obviously not there yet. But let's keep it pushing. At number 15, we have Tyrese Maxey of the Philadelphia 76ers. Maxey is a pretty interesting player because the guy is dynamic, I can't lie. He attacks closeouts so good. He's a really solid three-point shooter and an improved three-point shooter. He's a great transition player. He has a nice first step, and he really is a great complementary piece to James Harden and Joel Embiid. Maxey just finished up his 3rd season where he averaged over 20 points per game for the first time in his career, with shooting splits of 48% from the field, 43% from 3 on over 6 attempts from behind the arc a game, and 85% at the free throw line. That's a true shooting percentage of 61%, and it carried over somewhat to the playoffs. Even though his efficiency dipped to 55%, he was still a 20 point per game scorer and shot 40% from 3 on 8 attempts a game. Now you may be wondering, why is Maxey this low then if you're gonna compliment him and gas him up like this as a scorer? Well, it's because I really didn't talk about anything else outside of his scoring. His playmaking is not horrible, but it's not his job. He doesn't really initiate offense to a great degree or even that much. For the most part, he's just playing off of James Harden and Joel Embiid, whether in the half court or in transition, pushing the pace, which is where he excels and why he's such a prolific scorer as the 3rd option. But outside of his playmaking, he's not a great defender either. I mean, as a 6'2" shooting guard, he's going to be exploited just off of his height alone, but the ability on that side of the ball is not there as well, and considering the fact that his backcourt mate is James Harden, it caused a lot of problems for their point of attack defense. Nonetheless though, like I said, Maxey is a pretty dynamic player, and I'm intrigued to see what he's going to look like when James Harden leaves, because we all know that's obviously eventually inevitable. But moving on to number 14, we have the Washington Wizards up-and-coming guard Jordan Poole. I had to laugh a little bit there because I just thought about how Draymond punched him in the face and sent him to a new team. Oh man. Jordan Poole, bruh. Hey, but no disrespect, Poole is still a pretty good young player. I know I shit on him, especially after the playoffs last year, but I do believe that next season Poole will be a lot better. For one, it's gonna be a fresh start, lower expectations, nobody's expecting the Wizards to make the playoffs, and he's gonna have all the touches he wants. It's not like Tyus Jones is gonna be taking touches from him. Throw in the fact that Poole is a really solid shot creator, a handle that can be a little bit inconsistent, but when it's clicking, it's one of the tightest and smoothest handles in the league. He's a very crafty finisher. And though his three-point shooting took a dip last year, I do believe that's abnormal, as he's been a really good three-point shooter for every other part of his career. Poole's IQ definitely needs some work. He can be a little turnover prone at times and have some banana peel turnovers, but the real issues are his shot selection and defense. He comes down the court and he takes these horrible transition threes or these pull-up threes that just make no sense and kill the flow of the offense. Then he'll play on the other side of the ball defensively and he's just horrible. He's probably teetering on defensive liability status, and on the Washington Wizards, I'm not expecting him to play great defense or improve that well. I just think offensively he'll be a lot more comfortable and play better. Moving forward at number 13, we have Immanuel Quickley of the New York Knicks. Now I can't lie to you, Quickley is probably a little higher than I'm sure a lot of you guys were expecting, but I think that Quickley last year showed a lot of underrated potential and promise for the New York Knicks. For starters, defensively he is one of the best point of attack players in the league. He's a pest at fighting over screens, a menace on the ball and off the ball, good lateral quickness and hustle. I love the effort that he shows defensively. And offensively, he showed a lot of improvement with his consistency of not only his level of play maintaining throughout the duration of the season, and this year even being better, as post All-Star break he was a 20-point per game scorer, but he was doing it in minutes that Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle weren't even on the court with him. He was keeping that New York Knicks offense alive by any means necessary. Quickley obviously isn't the perfect player, he's not some elite playmaker, and as a shot creator he can struggle. Though he's a good floor spacer, he's not someone who's gonna go out there and create his own shot for others or himself consistently in the half court. But what he brings as a defender and an offensive option behind a number 1 or number 2, I think is very valuable, and why I have him at this spot on the list. Coming in at number 12, I have Franz Wagner of the Orlando Magic, and I am a big fan, as you guys know. I've made a video about Franz Wagner, so go and check it out. I talked about his strengths and weaknesses, and since then he's improved on some of those weaknesses, especially his post efficiency getting better. Franz is somebody that I will say is a jack of all trades but a master of none. He's not elite or great at anything, but he's really good at a lot of things. He's a good scorer, a good three-point shooter, a solid defender, a decent passer and playmaker, even though I wouldn't say he's particularly good at that, but he's not great at any of those things either. Nonetheless though, he's a very versatile offensive player, and I believe he's already capable of contributing at a very high level on any team in the league, and that includes the bottom tier teams and the championship contenders. And I can't say that for a lot of players on this list that are not only below him but even above him. But speaking of above, that brings us to the next spot at 11. I have Cade Cunningham. Now I know some people troll Pistons fans and say, oh, Cade doesn't play enough games for y'all to gas him up like this, but let's be serious here. Go and watch the games and it's very clear why Cade has a lot of hype by a lot of Pistons fans and why he was drafted number 1 overall. The guy is not an explosive athlete, which can affect his first step and things of that nature, but his IQ makes up for so much of that. He's a great passer, especially out of the pick and roll. He showed a lot of those flashes not only in the limited amount of games that he played in his sophomore year, but even in his rookie season. He was top 10 in the league in attracted double teams in his rookie season, which says a lot about a player that was not even that efficient from the field. Then you factor in his effort defensively, and I think that next year when he's healthy, healthy, he's gonna be one of the best guards in the NBA. But moving on with the list, we are finally in the top 10, and to start us off at number 10, I have Evan Mobley. Mobley from day one proved why he was worthy of being a top 3 pick in his draft class. I would even say out of all the players in that draft class, Mobley is the best player right now. And that's not a shot at Jalen Green or a shot at Franz Wagner or Josh Giddey or Cade Cunningham, but it can't be overstated that this is a guy that in his rookie season was already an elite defensive player. And even if you disagree with that, at the bare minimum, he was a great defensive player out the gate. Capable of switching on perimeter players, a great rim protector as well, good on the interior, could defend the pick and roll. I mean, you could probably say he was the best defensive rookie that we have seen since like Anthony Davis. It's very tough for a lot of bigs to adjust on the defensive side of the ball coming into the NBA, and Evan Mobley, it was not a challenge for him at all. And if you want to say it's the Jared Allen effect, then look at what we saw in his sophomore year this past season. He almost won the Defensive Player of the Year. He was easily the best defender on that team, and with certain lineups that had obviously D. Mitch and Darius Garland on the court, along with other guys like Lamar Stevens and Cedi Osman, there were lineups that Jared Allen wasn't there while he was playing with those guys and still kept them as a great defensive team when he was on the court. So off just the defensive impact that he has had for that Cavs team so far, he deserves a spot on this list. Offensively, he definitely does have some holes. We saw it in the playoffs this year. He was pretty pathetic and bullied by Mitchell Robinson. But even then, offensively, he's still pretty raw. He's not an elite post scorer or anything. He's not someone you can give the ball to down low and he can create for himself or others. And even as a screener, he struggles there as well because of his thin frame. But even despite that, he still has value as a play finisher, sharing the court with players like Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. And the flashes are there. There are times that Mobley will pull off a move and I'm like, whoa. Whether it's a crossover or a shot or a pass, I definitely think there's been more than enough offensive flashes combined with his already established defensive ability to justify him being in the top 10. But moving on to number 9, we have LaMelo Ball of the Charlotte Hornets. Now, I know a lot of people have probably forgotten about how great LaMelo Ball is because he's been hurt over the last year, but let's not forget that LaMelo Ball is not only one of the better young players in the league, but one of the best players in the NBA, period. This is a guy that is one of the best playmakers and probably a top 10 passer in the league. He has an amazing feel for the game. He pushes the pace really well. He's a good 3-point shooter with pretty good range. Also with the handle on him, obviously, to make him one of the best playmakers and offensive players in the league today. There's 2 knocks on LaMelo's game that I do have though. One is rim pressure. He does lack that. He's not a great finisher at the rim, and that can kind of hinder how great of a playmaker he is, which is crazy because he's already a great one. But then you throw in the fact that defensively he is pretty bad. And he doesn't have the excuse of his size. The guy is 6'7" with the 6'9" wingspan. There's no reason for him to go out there and be as bad as he is on the defensive side of the ball. Regardless though, I still think he's a fantastic player, and next year he's going to remind you guys why I have him so high on this list. In case, of course, if you forgot. If you're still a LaMelo believer, then hey, I'm right with you. But moving on to our next player at number 8, I have Paolo Banchero, the first overall pick, the rookie of the year of the Orlando Magic. Paolo got off to like an insane start to his rookie year, and I know that he tailored off later in the season, but still he was pretty good. He's an athletic wing at 6'10", capable of handling the ball, and with that combo, he's great at getting to the rim and bullying guys along the way. He's a pretty good passer as well. I would love to see him in a lot more short roll situations next season. And though defensively he definitely could be better, I do think he has potential to be a really solid and good defensive player. I don't think just off of his size and strength alone, he's ever going to be a horrible defender. He may not be efficient when it comes to his 3-level scoring, I will admit that. He's not a great jump shooter. I mean, for a while, the guy was struggling to knock down a single 3-point shot, but I do think the potential is there for him to be a solid shooter in this league. I think Paolo really has the potential to be a top 5 or top 10 player in the NBA. That's how high I am on his upside. The guy has the body of LeBron James, but the bag of Carmelo Anthony. I ain't gonna lie to you, that sounds like a future superstar. But let's move on. At number 7, we have Tyrese Halliburton of the Indiana Pacers. Now, I love Tyrese. I've been a big fan of his ever since he came into the NBA out of Iowa State. Hallie has quickly proven to not only be one of the better passers in the NBA, but one of the better shooters. He just finished his 3rd season where he was an all-star for the first time in his career, and he averaged 21 points a game, 10 assists, 4 rebounds, rebounds and 2 steals, with a true shooting percentage of 62%. A lot of people forget that midway through the season, the Pacers were actually 23-19 before Haliburton got hurt. When he came back, they were 5 games below 500 at 24-29. Haliburton was the life of that team, and it's so crazy because he still has obvious flaws offensively that if he fixed, he could be one of the best players that we have ever seen. Now, I'm not anticipating for him to fix all of those problems because he also has some issues defensively that we're going to get to in a second. But if you just look at where he is now, he has a high IQ, he's great in transition, makes reads in those situations and in the half court. A lot of people like to say he's an assist numbers merchant, which I definitely think has some truth to it. But at the end of the day, Haliburton is going out there and elevating the guys around him. Guys like Buddy Hield, Miles Turner, Benedict Mathurin, they're all more efficient when Haliburton is on the court because he is creating some looks for them. And when you combine that with range, it really is crazy how good of an offensive player he is because he can shoot off the catch and he can shoot off the dribble. The only thing really negative about that form is that it's probably not optimal for mid-range scoring. There's a couple downsides though with Haliburton, and the first one is that defensively he isn't very good. He has a solid wingspan and it's great for being off ball and getting in passing lanes and racking up some steals, but outside of that, he's not giving you any defensive value. And even as great as he is offensively, he does have some flaws. His handle is not so great that he can create consistently in the half court off the dribble for himself, which is a big reason why he struggles at getting rim pressure. Nonetheless though, like I said earlier, he's still one of the best offensive players in the league, and I think next year with the addition of Jarace Walker and hopefully Haliburton being healthy, I think the Pacers could be a really competitive team in the Eastern Conference. But moving on to number 6, we have the point guard of the Cleveland Cavaliers, all-star himself, Darius Garland. Darius Garland is one of my favorite players to watch. The guy has a really nice handle, tight, smooth, in my opinion, one of the best handles in the league. He's also one of the better shooters in the NBA as well, and has been that over the last couple of seasons. And as a playmaker, man, he is one of the best passers and decision makers in the league. For an offense that's very dependent on their backcourt play, Darius Garland really gets forgotten for what he does for that offense. Not only as a shooter off the ball and on the ball, because whether you need it off of a screen, off of the catch, he can deliver as a floor spacer for you. But on the ball, he's also, like I said, one of the better playmakers in the league, which allows Donovan Mitchell to be off the ball, as he's a pretty good off-ball player in his own right, and he's so great for Evan Mobley and Jared Allen in the pick and roll, being one of the best PNR ball handlers in the NBA. The only reason why I don't have Garland higher is that, for one, I don't know how much better he's going to get, even though right now he's still an all-star caliber player, which has a lot of value. That's why he's so high. But I don't think he's ever going to be a top 10 or 15 player. You could even argue he's probably not going to be a top 20 player in the NBA. Aside from just the potential with his ceiling, I also think he's pretty flawed when it comes to his attack of the rim. He has a nice floater, but as far as getting to the rim consistently or even efficiently, because the guy shot 57% in the restricted area this past year, it really isn't his forte. Then you throw into the fact that defensively, because of his size, especially in a backcourt with another undersized 2-guard and Donovan Mitchell, he can be exploited on that side of the ball, and it's very obvious why I don't have him in the top 5. But now that we are finally in the top 5, let's kick things off with number 5, Jaren Jackson Jr. Triple J, the defensive player of the year, all-star for the first time in his career. He is worthy of being a top 5 player under 25 years of age. It actually is kind of crazy how young Triple J is. The guy was drafted before Ja, but he's actually younger than Ja. Crazy for real. Last year, in my opinion, he showed a lot of potential and just outright ability, not only obviously defensively, but offensively as well. We know what he brings on the defensive side of the ball, so let me just get that out the way. He's the best shot blocker in the league. He's probably one of the only players I could say is a top 5 switch big and a top 5 rim protector in the league, which is insane value. He's also capable of defending the pick and roll as well. There really isn't anything he can't do defensively aside from his rebounding, which we'll get to in a second. Then you look at the offensive improvement that he showed throughout the duration of the season, and I think that goes under the radar for some weird reason. He was an improved 3-point shooter, going from 31 to 32% in 2022 to this past season shooting around 35 to 36% on 5 attempts a game. Triple J has a pretty underrated handle. He's capable of blowing by some bigs on the perimeter, and I think he does a good job in those situations, as well as the situations created for him by Ja Morant. As when you look at the last 30 games of the regular season for Triple J, he played the best basketball of his career, averaging 21 points a game, 7 rebounds and 3 blocks, on 52% shooting from the field, 34% from 3 on 5 attempts a game, and 79% at the free throw line. And don't forget, a lot of those games were without Ja Morant Durant as he was out with the suspension at the time. Obviously, Triple J is not a perfect player. He's not some elite shot creator or a great playmaker for that matter. He can be a little bit streaky with his jump shot and his offensive game as a whole, especially against the better defensive teams in the league like we saw against the Lakers in the playoffs. And as great as he is defensively for that Grizzlies team, he does have some flaws. For one, he's not a great rebounder, and that's a problem because if Triple J was a good rebounder, he would be at the 5. Now obviously a lot of that is just due to his size. He doesn't have that girth or inner core strength to bang down low with the bigs, but that's kind of a part of my problem with Triple J. He doesn't have that, hence it affects his rebounding. Now luckily for them, they have one of the best rebounders of all time in Steven Adams, especially for the offensive glass, but still it would be nice to see Triple J improve as a rebounder. But then you get into his whole fouling problems, and of course he's gotten better compared to his recent years, but it's still more than likely a problem on some nights. But nonetheless though, I think it's safe to say, barring injury, which is a concern for Triple J, wasn't last year, but it can be going forward. If he stays healthy, he's probably going to be the best defender or in the mix with the best defenders in the league over the next 5 to 6 seasons. I mean, he's under 25 and he's already got a depoy. Enough said. Moving on to number 4, we have Minnesota Timberwolves star guard Anthony Edwards. Ant-Man is definitely one of everybody's favorite players. The guy has this infectious personality that you just can't help but get behind. And he backs it up on the court. He produces on both sides of the ball. He's not a perfect player. We're going to get to his flaws in a second, but offensively, man, the guy is dynamic. It's rim pressure galore. He can get to it with ease. He's great at finishing at the rim through contact without it. Ant-Man can do it all. He's also a really good three-point shooter, even though he falls in love with it a little bit too much for my liking at times. He's still capable of being a floor spacer from behind the arc. Defensively on the ball, he's one of the better on-ball defenders at his position. He moves his feet very well. He can fight over screens solid. And even as a weak side shot blocker, I think there's some potential there with Anthony Edwards. I mean, the past 2 playoffs that he's had, he's averaged over a block in the first series against the Grizzlies, and this past year against the Nuggets, the man averaged 2 blocks a game. And while we're on the topic of playoffs, Anthony Edwards is a playoff riser. Now granted, it's only been 2 series of his career, but it's back-to-back playoffs with postseason averages of 28 points a game, 4 assists and 5 rebounds, a steal and a half, a block and a half, and a true shooting percentage of 60% as compared to his career true shooting percentage of 55%. So far, in the granted limited sample size, he's been amazing in the playoffs, playing better than he does in the regular season. Now, Ant-Man isn't perfect because defensively, he's not very good off the ball. He gets caught ball watching pretty frequently, and it allows three-point shooters to get shots off. It allows people to backdoor cut him to the rim pretty often. And as good as on-ball defense is, off-ball defense does have a lot more value, especially when you're talking about guards and wings. He also has issues with his playmaking. As we saw throughout the season, he had a huge problem getting the ball to Gobert in spots. And that wasn't a Gobert problem at times. A lot of it was Anthony Edwards. When they send a double his way, or they hard hedge him, or they help, sometimes he just looks confused out there and he just throws the ball away to the other team. I definitely like for him to fix some of those playmaking issues along with the off-ball defense problems, because if he does, I ain't gonna lie, the ceiling and potential for Anthony Edwards, Michael Jordan. That's all I'm gonna say. But speaking of insane potential, that brings us to our top 3, and to start things off, we have Zion Williamson. Now I know Zion has not played too many games. The guy played less than 30 games last year, and the year before that, he missed the entire season. But can we be real about something? Zion is still him. Let's be serious here. I understand he does miss a lot of games, and that's a problem. But look at my criteria: talent, success, potential, and durability. He may not have the durability, and the success may not be there compared to guys like Triple J or Anthony Edwards. But let's be serious. The other 2 parts of it, potential and talent, Zion clears mostly everybody on this list. You could argue if he is fully healthy, he is the best player on this list. But obviously the 2 ahead of him, they're not only more durable, but their talent is still pretty crazy as well. Zion is a freak of nature on both sides of the ball. One of the greatest athletes that the league has ever seen. His body control in midair when he gets to the rim is a thing of beauty. Through contact, without contact, Zion is gonna find a way to finish on you. A solid handle for someone of his size size and weight at his position, a good passer as well. He's a lob threat because of his leaping ability, which makes him great in the pick and roll. The man is truly dynamic, and then you throw in the fact that he's improved on the defensive side of the ball from being a really bad defender coming into the league. The only knocks on Zion, for one, like I said earlier, the durability problems, but also he's not a great floor spacer. But on a team like New Orleans that he has shown with or without floor spacing, he's still going to give you 25 plus points a game on insane efficiency. When he's fully healthy, he is a top 15 player in the league. You could argue borderline top 10 player. And for that alone, he deserves to be number 3 on this list. But moving on to number 2, we have the one and only Ja Morant. I have to say, Ja is one of the best athletes at the point guard position that I have ever seen. The guy can jump out the gym. He's as fast as lightning. He's great in the half court when it comes to beating guys off the dribble with or without a screen. And then you look at his skills. He has a great handle, good passer and decision maker, especially in the half court or in transition. He can catch lobs for you, and he's one of the most dominant paint scorers in the league today as a guard. Insane. The only real knocks on Ja has been his availability because of the off the court stuff, but aside from that, Ja isn't a great floor spacer, not a great jump shooter at all, and even at the free throw line, I would like for him to be a lot more efficient there. I mean, shooting below 75%, I just think that's a little unacceptable. Then you look at the defensive side of the ball, and there's definitely room for improvement. Ja is not a good defender. I know he gets a couple of highlight plays here and there, like an athletic steal or block, but don't let that fool you. Ja's pretty small. He can be taken advantage of by bigger players. He gets caught ball watching pretty often. Overall, the guy is just a negative on that side of the ball. But nonetheless, what he does for that team, especially in their half-court offense that lacks without him, cannot be overstated because he's one of the best offensive players in the NBA. But while we're on the topic of the best offensive players in the NBA, that leads into our final spot. Number 1, we have obviously Luka motherfucking Doncic. I mean, was there ever any doubt? Let's be serious here. I don't even have to run down what Luka does and brings to the table because you guys know. Of course, my boy had a bit of a down season last year, but guess what? He still put up career numbers for some people. He's one of the best playmakers in the league. He's a good shooter, not only from behind the arc, but inside the arc. One of the best finishers in the NBA. And since he's come into the league, from year 2, he's been a top 10 player in the league. You can argue a top 5 player right now. Of course, he has his flaws. Off the ball, Luka does need to improve, and defensively, he needs to show a lot more effort. The man was horrible last year defensively. Nonetheless, though, he's still the best player on this list. I don't care what anybody says. Zion has a little bit of an argument, but let's be real here. It's not too much of an argument because Luka is that motherfucking nigga. But that concludes this video, you guys. I appreciate you guys for showing up and showing out. It was a long one, so make sure you not only show your support by dropping a like, but also commenting your opinions. I would love to know what you guys think down below. This is your boy Young Mustard signing out. You guys stay safe and have a blessed day. Peace.